Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Sleepy Archive. I'm so glad you're here. How was your day today? Tonight, we open one of the oldest and most mysterious books ever written, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. In the land of the Nile, the ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an ending, but a journey, a long, slow passage through a world of darkness and light, of judgment and transformation, leading at last to a place of eternal peace. And so they wrote it all down, every spell, every prayer, every invocation, carved into stone and painted onto papyrus scrolls, placed inside the tombs of the dead, to guide the soul on its journey through the underworld. They called it the Book of Coming Forth by Day. We call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Tonight, by the light of an ancient flame, we read its words together. So let your body grow heavy and still. Let your breathing deepen. Let the warmth of the desert night settle over you like sand. And allow the oldest words in the world to carry you gently into the dark and into sleep. Chapter 1. The Beginning, Coming Forth by Day. When, in the year 1892, Sir Peter Lou Page Renouf began the publication of his translation of the Book of the Dead, his intention was that the work, once completed, should be preceded by an elaborate introduction, giving, besides all the information concerning the form and the history of the book, his views as to its sense and its religious value. As with the unfinished part of the translation, so here we are left without any notes or any clue whatever as to the form which this introduction was to have taken, and we are obliged to resort to the fifth of the Hibbert Lectures, given by Renouf in 1879, in order to know his views about the book. Before speaking of its contents, we have to state briefly under what form the book has come down to us. It is hardly necessary to repeat that it is no book at all in the ordinary sense of the word. It is neither a unity nor a whole. It is a collection which has grown by degrees at various epochs. Undoubtedly part of it goes back as far as the Old Empire. The texts of the Middle Empire show already that there were various editions, and we are forced to admit that its origin is not much later than the beginning of Egyptian civilization, as we see that some of the rubrics attribute certain chapters to a king of the first dynasty. In the course of centuries, the original text was modified and enlarged. New chapters were added, revisions were made, without casting these detached fragments into a whole. The various parts of the book were always independent, like the Hebrew Psalms. The acceptance of a chapter does not necessarily imply the acceptance of the next chapter, and it seems as if the relatives of the deceased chose in the collection which was at their disposal what they liked best, and the number of chapters which corresponded to the price they wished to pay for a papyrus. This description applies chiefly to the texts of the Book of the Dead of the period prior to the XXVth dynasty. Under the Sate kings, it seems that a complete revision of the text was made. A definite order was adopted, which was not rigidly binding on the writers, but to which they generally adhered. Various chapters were added, especially the last ones, 162 to 165, which are never found in the older copies. It seems also that something like what we should call an authorized version was adopted, and this was done by men to whom the book was hardly intelligible. A great many glosses were introduced, which were copied afterwards in all the hieroglyphic and hieratic texts. Although we do not find the strict accuracy of Hebrew manuscripts, the number of variants in the Sate, Ptolemaic or Roman texts is considerably smaller than in the manuscripts of the Theban period, and a collation of the hundreds of papyri of late epoch which fill our museums would lead to no great result. However, it is from a text generally considered as Satic, but which I believe to be of the Ptolemaic epoch, that the Book of the Dead has been first made known in all its extent. In 1842, Lepsius published the Long Papyrus in the Turin Museum, a document which he called the largest piece of Egyptian literature which has been preserved. Before him, Champollion had seen it, and had noticed that a great number of repetitions of the same text existed in various museums. He made use of it in his grammar, quoted here and there a sentence taken from it, but he did not make a special study of the document. Lepsius understood at once the importance of the book, which was the vademecum of the deceased, and seeing how much more extensive the Turin Papyrus was than the short copies which had been published before, he traced the whole document and published it 2 years afterwards. Lepsius gave to this work the name of Tatenbuch, Book of the Dead, in opposition to the name of Ritual adopted by Champollion, which is certainly incorrect. It is no ritual. A few chapters with a ritualistic character have been introduced into it. For instance, the chapter connected with the ceremony of opening the mouth of the deceased, which is occasionally met with, or chapter 171, chapter of wrapping up the deceased in a pure garment. But these are rare exceptions. On the whole, the Book of the Dead differs widely from a ritual. It is not the priest who speaks. There are no minute prescriptions as to how a ceremony is to be performed. All the prayers and hymns are put in the deceased's mouth. It is he whose speech is supposed to be heard in the other world. Tatenbuch, Book of the Dead, is not a translation of the Egyptian title, which is Book of Pert Emru. As Renouf says, 3 simple words, perfectly unambiguous when taken singly, but by no means easy of explanation when taken together without a context. And in fact, at the present day, no final translation has been given of these 3 words. Renouf translates, coming forth by day, as will be seen in the numerous examples which occur in this volume. But several objections may be raised against this interpretation, to which we should prefer coming out of the day being the period of a man's life, having its morning and its evening. The book is divided into fragments called, to each of which Lepsius has given a number, following the order of the Great Turin Papyrus, and which he calls chapters. Although his numbering is not quite correct, it has been adhered to in all the subsequent editions. In his lecture on the Book of the Dead, Renouf insists on the difficulty of translating it. Nothing can exceed the simplicity and the brevity of the sentences, and yet the difficulties which a translator has to overcome are very great. In the first place, the text is extremely corrupt. The unsatisfactory condition of the text is owing to different causes. The reasons which writers on Hebrew, Greek, or Latin paleography have enumerated for the purpose of accounting for mistakes in manuscripts apply with much greater force to the funereal manuscripts of the Egyptians. For as these were not intended to be seen by any mortal eye, but to remain forever undisturbed in the tomb, the unconscientious scribe had no such check upon his carelessness as if his work were liable to be subjected to the constant inspection of the living. But the most conscientious scribe might easily commit numerous errors. Many of them are to be traced to a confusion between signs which resemble each other in the cursive, or as it is called, the hieratic character, but not in hieroglyphic writing. Besides the errors of copyists, there are different readings, the origin of which is to be traced to the period during which the chapters were handed down by word of mouth only. There are copies which bear evidence that a critical choice has been made between the different readings of a passage, but the common practice was to admit the inconsistent readings into the text itself. Some of the variants have unquestionably arisen from the difficulty of understanding the ancient texts. I have no doubt whatever that some of the chapters of the Book of the Dead were as obscure to Egyptians living under the 11th dynasty as they are to ourselves. The most accurate knowledge of the Egyptian vocabulary and grammar will, however, not suffice to pierce the obscurity arising from what am. Rouge called symbols or allegories, which are in fact simple mythological illusions. The difficulty is not in literally translating the text, but in understanding the meaning which lies concealed beneath familiar words. These words of Renouf have still a very great force, although in the last 20 years some progress has been made towards a better understanding of the text. When Renouf gave the above description of the difficulties of the translation, the main source from which he could derive his information was what he called the corrupt Turin text. Since then, a critical edition has been made. It is based on texts of the XVIth and XIXDH dynasties, written at a time when the intelligence of the book was not lost to the same extent as under the Sates or the Ptolemies, as may be ascertained from the considerable number of glosses introduced into the Turin text, which are absent from the older versions. This edition has been compiled from various papyri, as the older ones are much shorter than the later ones. It is not a single document like Lepsius's Tatenbuch. Most of the chapters have been found in their old form. A few are missing, but a good number have been added to the list which have fallen out of the late versions. Generally, it is from this critical text that Renouf made his translation. Occasionally, he may choose an older version from a tomb, or perhaps a papyrus of the British Museum, but he hardly ever reverts to the Turin Tatenbuch unless he has no other resource at his disposal. Nevertheless, the difficulties which Renouf enumerates are only partly removed. We are still very far from being able to give a final translation of the Book of the Dead, and I have no doubt that Renouf would repeat about his own work what he says of Dr. Birch's translation. Many parts of it were most faithful to the original, must in consequence of that very fidelity be utterly unintelligible to an English reader. No doubt Renouf's translation is a great step towards making the book more intelligible. Still, the reader may often stumble over sentences out of which it is hardly possible to make a reasonable sense, in spite of their grammatical correctness, and which at first sight will seem childish, not to say, with Renouf, outrageous nonsense. But we may say with certainty that they were not so to the old Egyptians. Under this extraordinary or even ridiculous garment may be hidden some very simple or even elementary truths. Let us remember that we have not yet unraveled all the intricacies of the Egyptian mythology, which plays such an important part in the book. Moreover, we only begin now to understand how the Egyptians expressed abstract ideas. When we speak of passion, shame, remorse, hope, we have so thoroughly lost sight of the concrete element in these words that we are apt to forget that originally they must have been metaphors, and that they must have expressed something striking the senses and connected with the material world. An instance will illustrate the difficulty in this translation. Chapter 1:12 relates how, owing to an imprudent request, Horus was the victim of Sudu, who inflicted a wound on his eye, which caused him great suffering, and the text adds, "Lo, he ate his heart." Renouf translates, "and wrath devoured his heart." I should prefer, "he regretted sorely his foolish request." I believe to eat one's heart to mean to feel regret, repentance, or remorse. There the abstract meaning is not difficult to find out. But in other cases, as long as we have not discovered the key to the metaphor, we may go far astray, or if we do not go beyond the literal explanation, we miss the abstract sense, which is the true one. However, because the work will not bear the character of finality, because some obscurities will not be removed, and some difficulties remain unsolved, there is no reason why a scholar like Renouf should have shrunk from attempting the translation of the Book of the Dead, a work which he had before his eyes for years, and which he considered as the crown of his Egyptological labors. The lecture quoted above gives us Renouf's ideas as to the purpose and the sense of the book. It is the beatification of the dead considered in three aspects. The renewed existence as upon earth. The deceased enjoys an existence similar to that which he has led upon earth. He has the use of his limbs. He eats and drinks and satisfies every one of his physical wants exactly as in his former life. The gods themselves minister to him occasionally and contribute to his welfare and to his pleasures. The bliss of the future state consists chiefly in the pleasures of agricultural life. Transformation. The deceased has the range of the entire universe in every shape and form he desires. He can assume any appearance he likes, but these transformations are not forced upon him. He has no definite series to go through. They depend simply on his pleasure. Identification with Osiris and other gods. The identification with Osiris, which is already mentioned in the earliest parts of the book, is taken for granted later on, since the name of the deceased is always preceded by Osiris. He may be assimilated to other gods. For instance, in the 42nd chapter, every limb is assimilated to a different deity. This Osirian nature gives the deceased the power to triumph over the numerous enemies whom he has to face. To these three benefits which the book confers on the deceased, we should add a fourth, viz., complete preservation from dismemberment and decay. There is evidently in some of the prayers a remembrance of a time when the deceased were dismembered at their burial. And this way of treating the corpse is for the deceased an object of horror. The frequent mention of reconstituting the body, the promises that no part of it shall be taken away, all this shows of what supreme importance it was for him that his body should remain intact. Without a well-preserved body, there could be no life in the other world. Its destruction implies the destruction of the whole individual. This belief is the origin of mummification, for decay is the strongest agent of dismemberment and the certain ruin of the body. These are the outlines of the principal tenets of the Book of the Dead. If we inquire where they originated, there is no doubt that the bulk of the book came from Heliopolis. It is the doctrine of that ancient city and of its priests. Some of the chapters may be attributed to the priests at Abydos, as M. Maspero suggests, but it seems certain that, except for a small part, the birthplace of the Book of the Dead is the city of Areta, the place connected with the oldest religious traditions of the country, and which may rightly be called the religious capital of Egypt. The beginning of the chapters of coming forth by day, of the words which bring about resurrection and glory, and of coming out of and entering into Amenta, set upon the day of burial of En, the victorious, who entereth after coming forth. Here is En the victorious. He saith, I am one of those gods, the powers who effect the triumph of Osiris over his adversaries on the day of the weighing of the words. I am thy kinsman, Osiris. I am one of those gods to whom Nut hath given birth, who slay the adversaries of Osiris and imprison the Sebah on his behalf. I am thy kinsman, Horus. I am Thoth who effect the triumph of Osiris over his adversaries on that day of weighing of the words in the house of the prince, which is in Heliopolis. I am Tati, the son of Tati, conceived in Tatu, and born in Tatu, and Tatu is my name. I am with the mourners and weepers who wail over Osiris and Rekhit, and who effect the triumph of Osiris over his adversaries. Ra issued the mandate to Thoth that he should effect the triumph of Osiris against his adversaries, and the mandate is what Thoth hath executed. I am with Horus on the day of covering Teshtash, and of opening the fountains for the refreshment of the god whose heart is motionless, and closing the entrance to the hidden things in Restau. I enter in, and I come forth from the tank of flame on the day when the adversaries are annihilated at Sechem. I am with Horus on the day when the festivals of Osiris are celebrated, and when offerings are made to Ara, on the feast of the 6th day of the month, and on the feast of 10/8 in Heliopolis. I am the arch-craftsman on the day in which the ship of Sokuru is laid upon its stocks. I am he who seizeth the mattock on the day of the feast of hoeing in Sutenhenan. O ye who bring beneficent souls into the house of Osiris, do ye bring the soul of En together with you into the house of Osiris? Let him see as you see, let him hear as you hear, let him stand as you stand, and sit as you sit in the house of Osiris. O ye who give bread and beer to beneficent souls in the house of Osiris, do you give bread and beer at the 2 periods to the soul of En who is with you? O ye who unclose the ways and open the roads to beneficent souls in the house of Osiris, unclose then the ways and open the roads to the soul of En who is with you. Let him enter boldly and come forth in peace of the house of Osiris, without hindrance and without repulse. Let him enter at his pleasure and go forth at his will, triumphantly with you. And let that be executed which he shall order in the house of Osiris. No lightness of his in the scale has been found, and the balance is relieved of his case. The text taken for the basis of the translation of chapter 1 is that of the papyrus of Hunefru, AG of M. Neville's edition. The most common, indeed the only true, meaning of his rising, and even raising. This is too well known to require proof. Is causing to rise. The pyramid text of Teta says, L. 270, Horus hath given his children that they may raise thee up. In the same religious text, L. 248, is the rising from the funereal couch after the recitations made over the dead. The raising up, or resurrection, here spoken of is said, not only of the soul, but of the body of the deceased person. The papyrus of Nebseni has preserved 2 chapters, to which M. Neville has assigned the numbers 177 and 178. Chapter of raising up the body, of giving it eyes and the possession of ears, and establishing the head, made firm on its props. At is not simply the body, it is the dead body, that which has fallen, like the Latin cadaver, the Greek paitam alpha, the Hebrew, see transactions, SOC. Bib, Arch Vol, 8p, 221, Note 2. The true meaning of you is not luminous, but clear, distinct, glittering, coruscans, and hence bright, splendid, illustrious, glorious, and the like the Greek lambda alpha mu pyro, the Latin clarus, the Hebrew, or the French eclat, it is applied to sound as well as to light. It is said of Thoth, in the wretched orthography of a tablet of the XIXDH dynasty, he glorified them with the clear utterances of his mouth. Corresponds to the Greek lambda alpha mu pyro omicron phi omega nu alpha. As a verb is clario, and as glorifico. There are, it is true, variants in the title of chapter 17, giving the form. In spite of the excellent authority of these variants, they must be considered as giving an erroneous reading. The words remember, and are different in origin and meaning. The latter signifies confer glory, and they are religious formularies recited by priests, identifying the deceased person with Osiris and other divinities. There are numerous pictures in the tombs representing priests performing this office. Mat Eru really signifies one whose voice is law. It is essentially a divine title. See Altar at Turin, Transactions 3 PL 2, line 10, appended to Mr. Bonomi's article, and in no Egyptian text is it used of mortals supposed to be living. The translation, just of voix, limits the conception of Mot to one of its secondary acceptations. Semet Eru is also, and necessarily so, a divine act, that of Thoth, and it is done through his utterances. When I translate, it is Thoth who is here, I do not wish to imply that is the verb to be, any more than I should in the frequent expression, it is his son who revives his name, is a demonstrative particle and nothing else. Instead of looking out for moods and tenses and paradigms, Egyptologists ought to wake to the consciousness that the Egyptians never rose to the conception of what we mean by a verb. Instead of exalt, several MSS have, which has been rendered anoint with oil. One might translate the Turin text, illustrate with water and tattoo, and with oil and Abitus, exalting him who is in the heights, in excelsis, for this text combines different readings, but, as it is written, may have another meaning. Beck signifies clear, bright, shining, and the olive tree derives its name from this. The determinative and the causative furnish the sense. I make bright, illustrious, glorious, I celebrate or glorify. He is who on the height equals is, according to chapter 17, the sun. The word is ideographically written, or both the ram and the crane-like bird being called Ba. Some have cleverly inferred that the Egyptians thought that the soul was of a bird-like form, and others have not hesitated to consider Ba as expressive of the cry of the ram. The odd thing is that only the ram has this name, not the sheep or the lamb, who nevertheless indulge in the same cry. The truth is that in spite of appearances, the word Ba is not onomatopoeic here. Whether applied to the ram or to the heron, the word is expressive of human action and signifies digging through, cleaving, piercing, splitting. The hieroglyphic variants are very expressive. The last is already found in Dankum. 2:51. The ram is called an Egyptian Ba on account of the digs which he makes with his head, and a force which has occasioned the name of ram to be given to powerful engines. The heron is also called Ba because with its bill it cleaves the fishes which it attacks. And the word which we translate soul or spirit is called Ba because it is conceived as something which pierces, penetrates, and divides. The soul moves on, slowly, and we come now to the soul awakens, spells of protection. It is right to point out, to those who may wonder at this Egyptian etymology, that the Latin scio I know is etymologically akin to seco cut, securus and axe, and the Greek cap epsilon omega, cap epsilon zeta omega split, cleave. In the later recensions, this chapter is lengthened out by other petitions. The deceased asks, among other things, to appear before thee, O Lord of the gods, to attain the region of Maat. May I rise up a living God. Let me shine like the divine host which is in heaven. Let me be as one of you. Let my steps be lifted up in Sherebat. Let me see the ship of the holy Sahurian traversing the sky. Let me not be prevented from seeing the lords of the Tuat, the netherworld, smelling the fragrance of the sacrificial offerings made to the divine host, and sitting with them. Let the Shereheb, the priestly ministrant, make invocation over my coffin. Let me hear the prayers of propitiation. Let the divine ship Neshemet advance for me. Let not my soul and its possessors suffer repulse. Hail to thee, Prince of Amenta, Osiris, Lord of Nephura. Grant that I may advance in peace towards Amenta, and that the lords of Tazer may receive me and say to me, Salutation, salutation, in peace. Let them make for me a seat by the Prince of the Divine Powers. Let the two Chenimta goddesses, Isis and Nephthys, receive me in presence of Unnefru, the victorious. Let me be a follower of Horus and Restau, and of Osiris and Tadu. Let me assume all forms for the satisfaction of my heart, in every place that my genius wisheth. The following rubric is found as early as the XIXDH dynasty in connection with this chapter, but seems to have originally been attached to chapter 72. If this discourse is learned upon earth, or is written upon the coffin, he, the deceased, may come forth upon every day that he pleaseth, and again enter his house without impediment. And there shall be given to him bread and beer, and flesh meat upon the table of Ra. He shall receive allotment in the fields of Uru, the Elysian fields of Egyptian mythology, and there shall be given to him their wheat and barley, for he shall be flourishing as when he was upon earth. Chapter 1 is followed in M. Neville's edition by another, which the learned editor calls 1b. This chapter is found in so very few copies that the text cannot, as yet, be restored. The two texts published by M. Neville differ widely from each other. It was known, however, down to the Roman period, though not inserted into copies of the Book of the Dead. It is called Chapter of Introducing the Mummy into the Tuat on the Day of Burial. The 124th chapter bears a similar title. The word here, translated mummy, is probably not to be understood of the visible mummy, but of the living personality which it enclosed. The chapter opens with an invocation. Hail to thee, who art in the sacred region of Aminta, the Osiris. The deceased knows thee and thy name. Defend him from those worms which are in Restow, who live upon the flesh of men and swallow their blood. The names of the worms were given, but in consequence of the gaps in the text, they cannot now be recovered. The chapter finished with prayers in which the deceased identifies himself with Horus, who has taken possession of the throne which his father has given him. He has taken possession of heaven and inherited the earth, and neither heaven nor earth shall be taken from him, for he is Ra, the eldest of the gods. His mother suckles him and offers him her breast, which is on the horizon at dawn. O thou only one, who shinest from the moon, let me come forth amid that train of thine, at large, and let me be revealed as one of those in glory. And when the Tuat is opened to the gods, let En come forth to do his pleasure upon earth amid the living. This chapter occurs in only two of the ancient MSS, collated by Neville, E and PF. It is also found in the papyrus of Ani. O Tmo, who proceedest from Yorininu, who art resplendent as the lion-faced, and who strewest thy words to those who are before thee. Here cometh the faithful En, from the band of those who do the bidding of thy words. O ye seamen of Ra, at the gloaming of the day, let En live after death, like Ra daily. Hear the helmsman. As Ra is born from yesterday, so he too is born from yesterday, and as every god exulteth in life, so shall En exult even as they exult in life. The only ancient copy of this chapter is in the papyrus of Amenhotep, and here it is imperfect. It is I who travel on the stream which divideth the divine pair. I am come, let there be given to me the lands of Osiris. This fourth chapter has not as yet been found in any of the papyri of the best period. Here is En. He saith, I am he who riseth the hand which is motionless, and I come forth at the hour. I am the living soul, and there go before me the longings of those who bring salutation. This chapter is found in several of the best mizes, but the text is extremely corrupt and must have become absolutely unintelligible. The Turin text differs greatly from that of the older copies, and the transposition of words clearly shows how little the transcribers understood what they were writing. I follow chiefly the text of AA, the papyrus of Nebseni. I do not know how far it is correct to illustrate this undoubted origin of the Egyptian name for the ape as the saluting one by the following extract of a letter to Cuvier from M. de Vassel, about the Siamang apes in the neighborhood of Bencoolen in Sumatra. They assemble in numerous troops, and thus united, they salute the rising and the setting sun with the most terrific cries, which may be heard at the distance of many miles, and which, when near, stun when they do not frighten. This is the morning call of the mountain Malays, but to the inhabitants of the town, who are unaccustomed to it, it is a most insupportable annoyance. In this place of the Book of the Dead, the sign is a mere determinative of the sound on with the notion of salutation, just as the sign is a determinative of the sound with the notion of thirst. The saluters of the rising sun are neither real apes nor men, but the spirits of the East, who, as we are told in an inscription of the tomb of Ramses VI, effect the rising of Ra by opening the door at each of the four portals of the eastern horizon of heaven. They it is who light him on both sides, and go forth in advance of him. And when he arises, they turn into 6 cynocephali. The Egyptian words in the later texts are the alternative reading, being itself a proof that the difficulty of the text was already felt by some Egyptian scribe. But if the scribe had consulted the oldest text accessible in his day, he would probably have seen another way out. Our oldest Ms., that of Nebseni, reads Bizqua Abu Triple N U, which signify literally antecedent me cordis salutationem. The word biz is a very common one in pictures representing the introduction of a king or god into a temple. It is the technical term used in the tablet of Canopus for the inducting, by the king, of priests into their offices. The subject of this verb is hearts, an independent word, instead of being the made determinative of. The object of the verb is the speaker, qua, as the papyrus par reads, like AA. And it is easy to see how the later text, which is already found in Acts, has been corrupted out of the older. O statuette there, should I be called and appointed to do any of the labors that are done in the netherworld by a person according to his abilities, lo, all obstacles have been beaten down for thee. Be thou counted for me at every moment, for planting the fields, for watering the soil, for conveying the sands of east and west. In the earlier texts, in the latter word being read Eusebti, has very naturally been considered as derived from, in Coptic, to answer. For the statuette is addressed at the beginning of the chapter, and it replies at the end. But there is no reason for supposing that the earlier form had the same meaning. O, one of wax, who takest captive and seizest with violence, and livest upon those who are motionless. Let me not become motionless before thee. Let me not be paralyzed before thee. Let not thy venoms enter into my limbs, for my limbs are the limbs of Tmu. I am the one who presideth over the pole of heaven, and the powers of all the gods are my powers. I am he, whose names are hidden, and whose abodes are mysterious for all eternity. Apepi is the personification of the storm cloud, and, as such, is the enemy of Ra, by whom he is vanquished, as representing a natural phenomenon of irregular occurrence. He is not deified like Sutu, the darkness of night. On comparing this chapter with the 99th, it would appear that the occasion for reciting it is on the journey of the heavenly boat through ridges of cloud, which are pictured as the coils of a great serpent, and described as inanes, empty, void. In the papyrus of Nebkat, p. the vignette shows a deceased person transfixing the dragon. The chapter itself was set over a wax figure of the demon. The hour discloseth what the head of Thoth keepeth close, who giveth might to the eye of Horus. And I call upon the eye of Horus, which gleams as an ornament upon the brow of Ra, the father of the gods. I am that Osiris, the lord of Amenta, and Osiris knoweth his day, and that it is in his lot that he should end his being, and be no more. End his being, more strictly, bring to an end his activity. Being, though inevitable in a modern language, is much too abstract a word for these ancient texts. Implies motion, activity, and is not a simple negation, but implies completion, end, though not cessation. Our modern acceptation of the word perfect is often wrongly applied to. We should think rather of such phrases as anum perfisu, sol perfecto. I am he whom he loveth. I have come to see my father Osiris, to pierce the heart of Sutu, and to perform all duties to my father Osiris. I am the son who loveth his father, and I am come as a mummied one, glorious and well equipped. I cleave the heaven, I open the horizon, and I travel over the earth on foot. There come forward to me the glorious and the great ones, for I am furnished with numberless words of might. I eat with my mouth, and I chew with my jaw. For, lo, I worship the God who is Lord of the Tuat, and that is given to me which endureth amid overthrow. I am Ra coming forth from the horizon against his adversary, who shall not be delivered from me. I shall not be given up. My adversary shall fall before me. He hath been given up to me, and shall not be delivered from me. I rise up like Horus. I sit down as Ptah. I am victorious as Thoth, and powerful as Tmu. I walk upon my feet. I speak with my mouth, searching for him who hath been given up to me. He shall not be delivered from me. There is unfortunately no early text of this chapter, which we have in a very corrupt form, and can only restore conjecturally. The eater of his arm is evidently darkness, which is destroyed by the sun. Salutation to thee, O Ra, who guardest the secrets of the gates over this domain of Seb, in this balance with which Ra riseth up mat daily. Here am I, who cleave open the earth. Grant that I may come and acquire advance in age. This chapter, like the next, occurs only in par among the older MSS. It comes twice in the Turin copy, being repeated as chapter 120. Let the way be made for me that I may adore Ra at the Faramenta and the locks of Osiris. I age on the hounds of Horus. This chapter, in the MSS, of which the Turin copy is the type, is repeated as chapter 121, with the following rubric. Set over an earring of the flower and Shimu, put upon the right ear of the deceased person, with another earring, put in fine linen, upon which is written the name of N, on the day of burial. Hail to thee, O God, who sendest forth a moment, who presidest over all the secret things, and protectest the utterance of my words. Here is a God displeased against me. Let wrong be overwhelmed, and let it fall upon the hands of the Lord of law. Remove the impediments which are in me, and the evil and the darkness, O Lord of law, and let that God be reconciled to me, removing that which detaineth me from thee. O Lord of offerings and Kinu, let me offer to thee the propitiatory offering by which thou livest, and let me live by it and be reconciled. There is a very great difference between the earlier and the later texts of this chapter. Former translators, having chiefly the Turin text before them, have understood the title of the chapter as intended to remove the impurities from the heart of the deceased person. The Turin text of the chapter is really unintelligible, and even in the earlier text certain passages are so corrupt as to defy translation. O thou radiant orb, who arisest each day from the horizon, shine thou upon the face of the Osiris, in who adoreth thee at dawn, and propitiateth thee at the gloaming. Let the soul of En come forth with thee into heaven. Let him journey in a matted boat, and finish his course in the sected boat, till he reach in heaven unto the stars which set. Hail to thee, Horus of the two horizons, who art Cheperus self-originating. Beautiful is thy rising up from the horizon, enlightening the two earths with thy rays. All the gods are in exultation when they see thee, the King of heaven, with the net unnut established upon thy head, and the diadem of the south, and the diadem of the north upon thy brow, which mocketh her abode in front of thee. They who dwell in the Tuat are coming forth to meet thy majesty, and to gaze upon that beautiful semblance of thine. And I too come to thee that I may be with thee to see thine orb each day. Let me not be detained, let me not be repulsed. Let my limbs be renewed by the contemplation of thy glories, like all thy servants, for I am one of those who honored thee upon earth. The soul moves on, slowly, and we come now to the journey through the underworld. Let me reach the land of ages. Let me gain the land of eternity, for thou, my Lord, hast destined them for me. Hail to thee who risest up from the horizon as Ra in union with Mod. Thou dost traverse heaven in peace, and all men see thee as thou goest forward. And after being concealed from them, thou presentest thyself at the dawn of each day. Thy rays are upon men's faces, the golden glories that cannot be told, not to be described are thy beams. The lands of the gods, the colors of Punit are seen in them, that men may form an estimate of that which is hidden from their faces. Alone art thou when thy form riseth up upon the sky. Let me advance as thou advancest, like thy majesty, without a pause, O Ra, whom none can outstrip. A mighty march is thine, leagues by millions and hundreds of thousands. In a small moment thou hast traveled them, and thou goest to rest. Thou completest the hours of the night, according as thou hast measured them out. And when thou hast completed them, according to thy rule, day dawneth. The Osiris in, he saith, as he adoreth thee when thou shinest. He saith to thee when thou risest up at dawn, as he exalteth thine appearance. Thou comest forth, most glorious one, fashioning and forming thy limbs, giving birth to them without any labor, as Ra, rising in heaven. Grant that I may attain to the heaven of eternity in the abode of thy servants. Let me be united with the venerable and mighty Chu of the netherworld. Let me come forth with them to see thy glories, as thou shinest at the gloaming, when thy mother Nut enfoldeth thee. And when thou turnest thy face to the west, mine hands are in adoration to thy setting as one who liveth. For it is thou who hast created eternity. Adoration to thee, who arisest out of the golden, and givest light to the earth on the day of thy birth. Thy mother bringeth thee forth upon her hands, that thou mayest give light to the whole circumference which the solar orb enlighteneth. Mighty enlightener, who risest up in the sky and raisest up the tribes of men by thy stream, and givest holiday to all districts, towns, and temples, and raising food, nourishment, and dainties. Most mighty one, master of masters, who defendest every abode of thine against wrong, most glorious one in thine evening bark, most illustrious in thy morning bark. Glorify thou the Osiris in the netherworld. Grant that he may come into Aminta without defect and free from wrong, and set him among the faithful and venerable ones. Let him be united with the souls in the netherworld. Let him sail about in the country of Aru after a joyful journey. Come forth into heaven, sail across the firmament, and enter in a brotherhood with the stars. Let salutation be made to thee in the bark. Let invocation be made to thee in a morning bark. Contemplate Ra within his ark, and do thou propitiate his orb daily. See the ant fish in its birth from the emerald stream, and see the abda fish in its rotations. And let the offender fall prostrate when he meditates destruction for me by blows upon his backbone. Ra springs forth with a fair wind. The evening bark speeds on and reaches the haven. The crew of Ra are in exultation when they look upon him. The mistress of life, Her heart is delighted at the overthrow of the adversary of her Lord. See thou Horus at the lookout of the ship, and at his sides Thoth and Maat. All the gods are in exultation when they behold Ra coming in peace to give new life to the hearts of the Chu. And here is the Osiris in along with them. Horus openeth, the great, the mighty, who divideth the earths, the great one who resteth in the mountain of the west, and lighteneth up the Tuat with his glories and the souls in their hidden abode, by shining into their sepulchres. By hurling harm against the foe thou hast utterly destroyed all the adversaries of the Osiris-En. The Osiris-En, he saith when he adoreth Ra, the Horus of the two horizons, when setting in the land of life. Adoration to thee, O Ra, adoration to thee, O Tmu, at thy coming in thy beauty, in thy manifestation, in thy mastery. Thou sailest over the heaven, thou travellest over earth, and in splendor thou reachest the zenith. The two divisions of heaven are in obeisance to thee, and yield adoration to thee. All the gods of Aminta are in exultation at thy glory. They whose abodes are hidden adore thee, and the great ones make offerings to thee, who for thee have created the soil of earth. They who are on the horizon convey thee, and they who are in the evening bar transport thee, and they say, Adoration at the approach of thy majesty. Come, come, approach in peace. Up to thee, welcome, Lord of heaven, King of Akurta. Thy mother Isis embraceth thee, seeing in thee her son, as the Lord of terror, the all-powerful, as he setteth in the land of life at night. Thy father Titanen carrieth thee, and his arms are stretched out behind thee, and that which hath taken place is made last upon earth. Come, O Ra-Tmu, be thou adored. Do thy will daily. Grant success in presence of the cycle of the mighty gods. Beautiful art thou, O Ra, in thine horizon of the west. O Lord of law, in the midst of the horizon. Very terrible art thou, rich art thou in attributes, and great is thy love to those who dwell in the Tuat. The Osiris-En, he saith, adoring Tmu, when setting in the land of life, and shedding his rays on the Tuat. Hail to thee setting in the land of life, O Father of the gods! Thou art united to thy mother in Manu. Her two hands receive thee daily. Thy majesty hath part in the house of Sokru. Exult thou, because the doors are opened of the horizon, at thy setting in the mountain of the west. Thy rays, they run over the earth to enlighten the dwellers in Aminta. Those who are in the Tuat worship thee with loud acclaim, and cherish hope when they see thee daily. Thou grantest the gods to sit upon the earth, to those, namely, who follow thee and come in thy train. O august soul, who begettest the gods, and dost invest them with thine attributes, the unknowable, the ancient one, the mighty in thy mystery. Freedom forever from perdition is derived through this book, and upon it I take my firm stand. Let there be given me armfuls of bread and drink, and let me be accompanied by this book after my life. The 15th chapter as it stands in the later recension, represented by the Turin Tadenbuch, is of very recent origin. It is in fact a collection of texts originally independent of each other. A hymn to Ra at his rising, a litany, a hymn to Ra at his setting, a hymn to Tmu at his setting, followed by a statement respecting the spiritual importance of the document. Of the last hymn there are no copies of ancient date, but the other three compositions are found more or less perfect as far back as the XIXDH dynasty. The discrepancies, however, between the ancient texts furnish so much evidence of free composition on the part of the scribes that it is impossible to suppose that they had before them documents recognized as sacred and canonical. Neville has found it necessary to publish 4 different forms of the hymn to the rising and 3 of the hymn to the setting sun. The ideas and expressions throughout these hymns are current in the religious texts of the XVI, Ith, and XIXDH dynasties. In the translation here given, I have followed the form adopted by the later recension, correcting the text when necessary by the copies written in the better periods. As one of the meanings of is minuer, and as the ordinary meaning of the Demotic is small, like the Coptic equals lambda epsilon pi tau, it is not improbable that the stars receive this appellation on account of their tiny size as compared with the sun and moon. They were what Horace called the ignes minores. The sun and moon, as we all know, are called in Jinn, I-16, the 2 great lights. Another litany, preceding Amai, is found in the papyrus of Ani. It is addressed to Osiris, the everlasting Lord, Unnephru, Horus of the 2 horizons, of many forms and mighty of attributes. Ta Sakru, Tmu in Heliopolis, Lord of the unseen world, who hath built up Memphis and its gods. Hail to thee, Chabasu in Heliopolis, Hemimid in Sherabau, and unto more potent than the unseen gods in Heliopolis. Hail to thee, and in Horus in the 2 horizons, who extendeth his steps and traverseth the heaven. He is Horchuda. Hail to thee, eternal soul, soul which is in Tatu, Unephru, son of Nut. He is Lord of Akurta. Hail to thee, as thou reignest in Tatu, the royal crown is fixed upon thy brow. Thou art the only one, the author of his own attributes. Thou restest in Tatu. Hail to thee, Lord of Heracleopolis, for whom the bark of Sokru is placed upon its sledge, who repellest the Sebaw, the doers of wrong, and who puttiest the Udad into its place. Hail to thee, potent one, at thine appointed moment, most mighty one, Prince of an Urief, eternal Lord, author of eternity. Thou art the Lord of Sutenhenen. Hail to thee, who restest upon Mot. Thou art the Lord of Abydos. Thy limbs reach to Tatsert. Thou art he who abominatest wrong. Hail to thee, in the midst of thy bark, who bringest the Nile from his fountain, upon whose dead body the light shineth. He is the one who is in Netchin. Hail to thee, author of the gods, king of north and south, Osiris, the triumphant one, possessing the entire universe in his beneficent alternations. He is the Lord of the universe. Grant me passage in peace. I am righteous. I speak not falsehood knowingly. I am not guilty of duplicity. Instead of resting in the land of life, the older texts have in Aminta, or in life in Aminta, or as one living in Aminta. This circle is not necessarily of gods. The Bremner Papyrus in the British Museum, 14, line 8, says in a page not only to a Peepee, who is no god, and to his soul and body, and ghost and shadow and children, and to his kith and kin, but also to his, that is all associated with him, so to his son entourage, that should express the feast of the new moon, is only natural, though Lepsius has pointed out serious difficulties on the subject, but also expresses the number 9. Whence in this relation arises the Egyptian conception of the number 9. Is it the round? We should say the square. Number 3 times 3? It certainly is merely a round number in many instances, but what is still more certain is that the same expression meaning circle of gods and 9 gods. The circle was supposed to consist of 9 gods, and was enlarged to companies of 18 or 27. It is, I am sure, perfectly idle work to look for more profound reasons for the theory of the Ennead. Every god of importance had his, and the best theory that has ever been given is that given at the beginning of chapter 17. When Lepsius divided the Totenbuch into 165 chapters, that portion of it which was numbered as chapter 16 was in fact merely the vignette of chapter 15. It has been thought well to publish with this translation the vignettes from the great papyrus law of Leiden, representing A, the rising, and B, the setting sun. See plates. Into the sun is represented as rising into heaven, saluted by the 6 cynocephalous apes. He is also saluted by 2 goddesses kneeling. In the papyrus of Hunfer, these goddesses say, I am thy sister Isis, I am thy sister Nephthys. The tat which is between them is a symbol both of Osiris and of the East, and in Ba is replaced by the sign. In the later periods, the dawn was represented by the sign consisting of the sun rising out of the east between Isis and Nephthys. The sign of life with Macron in, which primarily means rise up, rises out of the tat, and with hands proceeding from it raises up the sun. And B, the central object is the sun setting in the west. He is saluted by 3 hawk-headed and by 3 jackal-headed divinities, the spirits of Pu and of Nechen. Below this scene, the sun of yesterday and the sun of today, in lion forms, are saluted by Isis and Nephthys. I am the great heron who is in Heliopolis, who presideth over the account of whatsoever is, and of that which cometh into being. Who is that? It is Osiris who presideth over the account of all that is and all that cometh into being, that is endless time and eternity. Endless time is day, and eternity is night. The soul moves on, slowly, and we come now to the gods of the netherworld, Ra, Thoth, and Osiris. I am Amsu in his manifestations. There have been given to me the 2 feathers upon my head. Who is that? And were his feathers? It is Horus, the avenger of his father, and the 2 feathers are the uraei upon the forehead of his father Tamu. All defects are done away, all deficiencies are removed, and all that was wrong in me is cast forth. I am purified at the 2 great and mighty lakes at Suttenhunen, which purify the offerings which living men present to the great God who is there, which are the 2 great and mighty lakes, the lake of Natron and the lake of Mot. What is that? The road upon which Father Tamu advanceth, when he goeth to the field of Aru, approaching to the land of spirits in heaven. What is that? This gate of the gods is Hakr. It is the gate and the 2 doors and openings, through which Father Tamu issueth to the eastern horizon of heaven. Who are they? Those who have gone before are Hu and Sao. May I be with their Father Tamu throughout the course of each day. I make full the eye when it waxeth dim on the day of battle between the 2 opponents. What is that? The battle of the 2 opponents is the day upon which Horus fighteth with Sut, when he flingeth his filth upon the face of Horus, and when Horus seizeth upon the genitals of Sut, for it is Horus who doeth this with his own fingers. What is that? The right eye of Ra in the period of its distress, when he giveth it free course. And it is Thoth who lifteth up the net from it. I see Ra, when he is born from yesterday, at the dugs of the Mahura cows. His course is my course, and conversely mine is his. What is that? Ra, in his birth from yesterday at the dugs of the Mahura cows. It is the figure of the eye of Ra, at his daily birth. And Mahurit is the eye. What is that? One of those in the train of Horus, said with reference to whom his Lord loveth. Hail, ye possessors of Mot, divine powers attached to Osiris, who deal destruction to falsehood, ye who are in the train of Hope Pescos, grant me that I may come to you. Do ye away the wrong which is me, as ye have done to the 7 glorious ones, who follow after the coffined one, and whose places Anubis hath fixed on that day of come thou hither. Hope Pescos is the divine flame, which is assigned to Osiris for burning the souls of his adversaries. I know the names of the 7 glorious ones who follow the coffined one, and whose places Anubis hath fixed on the day of come thou hither. The leader of this divine company, and Aref, the great is his name. 2. Cat. 3. The burning bull, who liveth in his fire, for the red-eyed one in the house of gauze. 5. Fiery face which turneth backwards. 6. Dark face in its hour. 7. Seer in the night. It is Osiris, as he cometh to Tatu, and there findeth the soul of Ra. Each embraceth the other, and becometh 2 souls. The pair of gods are Horus, the avenger of his father, and Horus, the prince of the city of blindness. I am the great cat, who frequenteth the Persea tree in Heliopolis, on that night of battle wherein is effected the defeat of the Sebah, and that day upon which the adversaries of the inviolate God are exterminated. Who is that great cat? It is Ra himself. For Sao said, he is the likeness, Mo, of that which he hath created, and his name became that of cat, Mo. The night of conflict is the defeat of the children of failure, Elephantine. There was conflict in the entire universe, in heaven and upon the earth. He who frequenteth the Persea tree is he who regulateth the children of failure, and that which they do. O Ra, in thine egg, who risest up in thine orb, and shinest from thine horizon, and swimmest over the firmament without a peer, and sailiest over the sky, whose mouth sendeth forth breezes of flame, lightening up the 2 earths with thy glories. Do thou deliver in from that God whose attributes are hidden, whose eyebrows are as the arms of the balance upon that day, when outrage is brought to account, and each wrong is tied up to its separate block of settlement. The God whose eyebrows are as the arms of the balance is he who lifteth up his arm. Deliver me from those wardens of the passages with hurtful fingers, attendant upon Osiris. The wardens of Osiris are the powers who keep off the forces of the adversaries of Ra. May your knives not get hold of me. May I not fall into your shambles, for I know your names. My course upon earth is with Ra, and my fair goal is with Osiris. Let not your offerings be in my disfavor. O ye gods upon your altars, I am one of those who follow the Master, a keeper of the writ of Chepera. I fly like a hawk, I cackle like the Smin, goose, I move eternally like Nehebko. O Tmu who art in the great dwelling, sovereign of all the gods, deliver me from that God who liveth upon the damned, whose face is that of a hound, but whose skin is that of a man, at that angle of the pool of fire, devouring shades, digesting human hearts, and voiding ordure. One seeth him not, this God whose face is that of a hound, and whose skin is that of a man. Eternal Devourer is his name. O fearful one, who art over the 2 earths, red God who orderest the block of execution, to whom is given the double crown and enjoyment as Prince of Sudden-Hunan. It is Osiris to whom was ordained the leadership among the gods, upon that day when the 2 earths were united before the inviolate God. The junction of the 2 earths is the head of the coffin of Osiris, whose father is Ra, the beneficent soul in Sudden-Hunan, the giver of food and the destroyer of wrong, who hath determined the paths of eternity. Deliver me from that God who seizeth upon souls, who consumeth all filth and corruption in the darkness or in the light. All those who fear him are in powerless condition. O Chepera, who are in the midst of thy bark, and whose body is the cycle of the gods forever, deliver me from those inquisitorial wardens to whom the inviolate God of glorious attributes hath given guard over his adversaries, and the infliction of slaughter in the place of annihilation, from whose guard there is no escape. May I not fall under your knives. May I not sit within your dungeons. May I not come to your places of extermination. May I not fall into your pits. May there be done to me none of those things which the gods abominate. For I have passed through the place of purification in the middle of the Mescat, for which are given the Mezit and the Tehennet cakes in Tananit. The Mescat is the place of scourging in Suttenhunen. The Tehennet is the eye of Horus. Tananit is the resting place of Osiris. Tmu buildeth thy dwelling. The lion-faced god layeth the foundation of thy house, as he goeth his round. Horus offereth purification, and Sut giveth might, and conversely. I have come upon this earth, and with my 2 feet taken possession. I am Tmu, and I come from my own place. Back, O lion with dazzling mouth, and with head bent forwards, retreating before me in my might. I am Isis, and thou findest me as I drop upon my face the hair which falleth loosely on my brow. I was conceived by Isis, and begotten by Nephthys. Isis destroyeth what in me is wrong, and Nephthys loppeth off that which is rebellious. Dread cometh in my train, and might is in my hands. Numberless are the hands who cling fast to me. The dead ones and the living come to me. I defeat the clients of mine adversaries, and spoil those whose hands are darkened. I have made an agreeable alliance. I have created the inhabitants of Sherebat and those of Heliopolis, and every god is in fear before the terrible, the Almighty One. I avenge every god against his oppressor, at whom I shoot my arrows when he appeareth. What is this? Of unknown attributes, which Heman hath given, is the name of the funereal chest. The witness of that which is lifted is the name of the shrine. The lion with dazzling mouth and with head bent forwards is the phallus of Osiris, otherwise of Ara. And I who drop the hair which hath loosely fallen upon my brow. I am Isis, when she concealeth herself. She hath let fall her hair over herself. They who mount up against me, woe to them. They are the associates of Sut as they approach. The 17th chapter is one of the most remarkable in the whole collection, and it has been preserved from times previous to the Exioth dynasty. The very earliest monuments which have preserved it have handed it down accompanied with scholia and other commentaries interpolated into the text. Some of the monuments enable us to some extent to divide the original text from the editions, in consequence of the latter being written in red. But there is really only one text where the editions are suppressed, and which therefore offers the most ancient form, as far as we know it, of the chapter. This is the copy on the wall of the tomb of Horotep. The sarcophagus itself of Horotep contains a copy of the text along with the editions. The chapter must already at the time have been of the most venerable antiquity. Besides these 2 copies of the chapter, we have those from the sarcophagi of Ora and Sitbastit, published, like those of Horotep by M. Maspero, 2 from the sarcophagi of Menahotep, and 1 from that of Sebekah, the 3 latter published by Lepsius in his Eltes text. The British Museum has Sir Gardner Wilkinson's copy of the text inscribed on the coffin of Queen Menahotep of the Exith dynasty, and also a fragment, 6636a, of the coffin of a prince named Hornfru. Here then we have an abundance of witnesses of the best period. They unfortunately do not agree. The progress of corruption had no doubt begun long before, and the variants are not simply differences of orthography, but positively different readings. The differences, however, are chiefly in the scholia. Even when the explanations of the text are identical, the form differs. The latest recensions have retained the form. The ancient added the feminine. What is that? But some of the ancient texts give the equivalent words, and Horotep does without them altogether. These words were evidently additions not merely to the text, but to the scholia. The text of the chapter grew more and more obscure to readers, and the explanations hitherto given were so unsatisfactory as to call for others. The texts of the manuscripts of the new empire furnish a good deal of fresh matter, much of which is extremely ancient, though the proof of this is unfortunately lost through the disastrous condition of literature in the period preceding the Xth dynasty. The Xth dynasty and its immediate successors inherited, but did not invent the new form of the Book of the Dead, with its succession of vignettes, which, however differing in detail, bear the stamp of a common traditional teaching. The manuscripts of a later period bear witness, with reference to this, as well as to other chapters, to a recension of an authoritative kind. The text becomes more certain, though perhaps not either more true or more intelligible, and the notes and explanations have here reached their fullest extent. It would take an entire volume to give the translations of all the forms the chapter has assumed. It must be sufficient here to give the earliest forms known to us of the text, and of the first commentaries. These are printed in characters which show the difference between text and later editions, all of which, it must be remembered, are of extreme antiquity, some 2,000 years before any probable date of Moses. Explanations or other interesting matter occurring in the manuscripts of the later empire will be referred to in the notes. The title in the early copies is the simple one here heading the chapter. In those which begin at the Xth dynasty, the title is very like that given for the first chapter. The chief additions are that the deceased person takes every form that he pleases, plays draughts, and sits in a bower, comes forth as a soul living after death, and that what is done upon earth is glorified. The meaning of the Egyptian is quite plain, but the readings, most probably through the absence of determinatives in the oldest style, are somewhat different. Horotep and other texts have, apparently as one word, compounded of tmu and unin, which may signify the closer and opener, but Sebekieh and later texts have. The papyrus of Nebseni has, in the third person, which does not alter the meaning, but this is quite an isolated reading. The later recension, as represented by the Turin Todtenbuch and the Cadet Papyrus, has, which only prominently brings forward what is implied in all the other texts, that the opener is a god. The absence of a determinative after is no objection to the sense opener, especially after. It is absolutely necessary when dealing with mythology to look to physical rather than to metaphysical meanings. I have sufficiently discussed the meanings of the word in my essay on the myth of Osiris on Nefer. The later recensions add an interpolation, not without very different readings, to the effect that the sun made his first appearance when Shu raised the sky from the height of Kamenyu, where he destroyed the children of failure. The raising of the sky by Shu is very frequently represented in pictures. Seb, the earth, and Nut, the sky, have been sleeping in each other's arms during the night. Shu, daylight at sunrise, parts them, and the sky is seen to be raised high above the earth. Shu, who is of course the son of Ra, is in consequence of this act called Aneru, the lifter up of the heaven. Kamenyu is the geographical name of the town, called by the Greeks Hermopolis. The mystical Kamenyu, however, is alone referred to in this place. The word itself means 8, and Lepsius sees here a reference to 8 elementary deities. We must remember that the passage itself is an interpolation, of which there is no trace in the older texts. The children of failure, Dephesir, Dissolvi, Deliquium, are the elements of darkness which melt away and vanish at the appearance of day. This mythological expression here found in an interpolated passage is met later on in a genuine portion of the older text. The names of Ra, the sun god, are said, when taken together, to compose the cycle of the gods, or the names which he has created, to which he has given rise. That is, the names of all the solar phenomena, recurring as they do, day after day, to the eyes of all beholders, compose the cycle of the gods, who are also called the limbs or members of Ra. The scholia contained in the papyri of the Xviith and later dynasties explain the text as follows. It is Ra as he creates the names of his limbs, which become the gods who accompany him. And the present chapter later on says of Chepera, the rising sun, that the cycle of the gods is his body. The god who has hitherto been spoken of is Ra. In glaring contradiction to the whole text, a later note states that the resistless god is the water, which is Nu, that is heaven. Nu is not alluded to at all in the primitive text, but the papyrus of Nebseni already exhibits the corruption of the fine passage. I am he who closeth, and he who openeth, and I am but one. This is itself an addition, the true meaning of which was afterwards destroyed by the interpolation of the words. These are ambiguous. They might mean that the god was alone in heaven, or that he was alone as heaven. The papyrus of Ani has, I was born from Nu. These attempted improvements do not give a favorable impression of the exegetically acumen of Egyptian theologians. But the mention of water in the Scholion has nothing whatever to do with the doctrine of Thales, and to suppose that it has implies a confusion between two very different realms of human thought. The papyrus of Nebseni and all the subsequent texts give the explanation that yesterday means Osiris, and the morrow means Ra. And the vignette in the papyrus of Ani gives the name of yesterday to one of the lions and of morrow to the other. This mythological cosmology reminds one of the saying of Heraclitus that strife is the father and the king of all things, and the doctrine that all becoming must be conceived as the product of warring opposites. Pi alpha nu, nu tau alpha kappa alpha rho iota nu, gamma nu epsilon sigma theta alpha iota, of that which is, and of that which cometh into being. Here, as in many other places, which is a verb of motion, and really signifies rise up, spring forth, is pointedly distinguished from that which is, so far from signifying being, that which is, it very much more nearly corresponds to in the frequent expression, that which is and that which is not yet. The sense of good being, so commonly given to the divine name An-Nefer, is utterly erroneous. The god's name is written on a tablet, Denk 3, 114i, and the name is also written Or, which are ligatures of and. The soul moves on, slowly, and we come now to words of power, ancient incantations. The more recent recensions thus answer the question about the lakes. Eternity is the name of one, and the great green one, that of the other, the lake of Natron and the lake of Mot. The explanation which M. Maspero has recently given, PSBA 14:314, of the word, as connected with health, receives confirmation from the Scholia and the Papyri, according to which Thoth not only delivered the eye from the veil of darkness which oppressed it, but carried it off in life, health, and strength, without any damage. These stars never set, but are perpetually revolving round the pole. It is therefore evidently with the polar star that we must identify the coffin of Osiris. The names of the seven glorious ones vary according to the different authorities, and these stars themselves receive other mythical forms. That of the seven cows and their bull is recorded in the 148th chapter. Names like the red-eyed or the red-haired cow seem to imply double stars. The red-eyed is said to abide in house of gauze, perhaps a cobweb. The papyri add the important note that the day of come thou hither represents the moment when Osiris says to Ra, come thou hither, or, as some read, come thou to me. The speaker adds that he sees the meeting of the two gods in Amenta. I come to you, ye great circles of gods in heaven, upon earth, and in the world below. I bring to you in void of offense towards any of the gods. Grant that he may be with you daily. Glory to Osiris, Lord of Restau, and to the great gods who are in the world below. Here is Enhu Seth. Hail to thee, Prince of Amenta, Unneferu who presidest and abidest. I come to thee with righteousness, without sin upon me. I am not knowingly a speaker of wrong. I am not given to duplicity. Grant me bread, the right of appearance of the tables of the lords of Mod, entering in and going out of the netherworld, and that my soul may not suffer repulse in its devotion to the orb of the sun and the vision of the moon god forever. I come to you, O circle of gods in Restau, and I bring to you in. Grant him bread, water, air, and an allotment in the second Hotepu like Horus. Glory to Osiris, the Lord of eternity, and to the circle of gods in Restau. Here is En, and he saith, I come to thee, I know thy will, and I am furnished with thine attributes of the tit. Grant me an abiding place in the netherworld by the lords of Mod, my permanent allotment in the second Hotepu, and the receiving of cakes before thee. The great circle of gods in Heliopolis is of Tmu, Shu, and Tefnut, and the Sebah who were defeated and extinguished were the associates of Sud on the renewal of his assault. The great circle of gods in Tatu is of Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, and Horus the avenger of his father. And they who set up the Tat are the two arms of Horus, prince of Sechem. They are behind Osiris, as bindings of his raiment. The great circle of gods in Sechem is of Horus in the dark, and Thoth, who is of the great circle of an Ref. The great circle of gods in Pu and Tepu is of Horus, Isis, Imsta, Happy, and the pillars of Horus are erected when Horus saith to those who follow him, let the flagstaffs be erected there. The great circle of gods on the two regions of Rekhit is of Isis, Nephthys, Imsta, and Happy. The great circle of gods on the highway of the damned are Thoth, Osiris, Anubis, and Asts. And judgment is passed on the highway of the damned when the suit is closed against the souls of the children of failure. The great circle of gods at the great hoeing in Tatu when the associates of Sud arrive, and take the forms of goats, slay them before the gods there, while their blood runneth down. And this is done according to the judgment of those gods who are in Tatu. The great circle of gods in an Ref is of Shu, Babai, Ra, and Osiris. And the night of hiding him who is supreme of attributes is when there are at the coffin, the thigh, the head, the heel, and the leg of Unneferu. The great circle of gods in Restau is of Osiris, Horus, and Isis. The heart of Horus rejoiceth. The heart of Osiris is glad, and the two parts of heaven are satisfied when Thoth effecteth the triumph of En before these 10 great circles about Ra, and about Osiris, and the circles of gods attached to every god, and every goddess before the inviolate god. All his adversaries are destroyed, and all that was wrong in him is also destroyed. Let the person say this chapter, he will be purified and come forth by day, after his death, and take all forms for the satisfaction of his will. And if this chapter be recited over him, he will be prosperous upon earth. He will come forth safe from every fire, and no evil thing will approach him, with undeviating regularity for times infinite. The 18th chapter is one of those found in the earliest copies of the Book of the Dead, on the wooden coffins of the Old and Middle Empires, the most complete ancient copy being on the coffin of Queen Mentuhotep of the 11th dynasty. It consists of a litany addressed to Thoth, who is invoked for securing the triumph of the departed against his adversaries in presence of the gods of certain localities. Each petition has reference to some mythological event, and is supplemented by the enumeration of the gods constituting the divine company presiding at the locality named, and sometimes by a short comment on the myth referred to. The order of petitions is somewhat different in the later recensions, and the text has suffered other alterations. Copies of this chapter are extremely numerous, particularly in the later periods. The chapter really begins with the petitions to Thoth. The preceding portion is, as far as I know, found only in the Papyrus of Ani. But as the vignette which belongs to this portion has a place in the Great Leiden Papyrus of Kenna, the text cannot have been confined to a single manuscript. It is particularly valuable as illustrative of the ritual use of portions of the Book of the Dead. Saint-Marie-F signifies the beloved son, and the priest of this name in the funereal rites personified Horus in his dutiful offices to his father Osiris. I do not know why is always translated the son who loves him instead of the son he loves, which is the right meaning. Is the place which he loves not the place which loves him? And similarly is the wife whom he loves, not who loves him. The ancient form renders it more than probable that is not phonetic in the later form, but that as in Kai, originally, whence the Coptic, a circle or round vessel to go round, it is ideographic of roundness. This concept is certainly to be found in the word, the Coptic, a head, or rather top of the head, as in the Latin vertex, akin to vortex from the same root as vertera. The sign, which in later texts often appears as the determinative, has its origin in the cursive form of carelessly written. Instead, we also find, which is certainly not phonetic but ideographic of enclosure, as in the word a wall, pares, rho cap omicron. This word occurs already in the pyramid texts under the form. See Pepii 571, which M. Maspero renders La Grande en San Dion. The evident etymological relationship to the Coptic has led some scholars to translate the Egyptian word as signifying chiefs, princes. But though the lexicons give dux and princeps as meanings of the Coptic word, these are but secondary applications of head. We have to inquire why means head or top of the head. And the reason is its roundness, as indicated by the ideographic signs, or. The old Egyptian word invariably implies an association of persons, and this is why, in consequence of its etymology, I translate it as circle of gods. It is synonymous, cf. Chapter 41, Note 8, Chapter 41, Note 8, with Thy father Tmu hath prepared for thee this beautiful crown of triumph, the living diadem which the gods love, that thou mayest live forever. Osiris, prince of Amenta, mocketh thee to triumph over thine adversaries. Thy father Seb hath decreed that thou should be his heir, and be heralded as triumphant, Horus son of Isis and son of Osiris, upon the throne of thy father Ra, through the defeat of thine adversaries. He hath decreed for thee the two earths, absolutely and without condition. And so hath Etmu decreed, and the cycle of the gods hath repeated the glorious act of the triumph of Horus the son of Isis, and the son of Osiris for ever and ever. Osiris, the prince of Amenta, the two parts of heaven united, all gods and all goddesses who are in heaven and upon earth join in effecting the triumph of Horus the son of Isis and son of Osiris over his adversaries before the great circle of gods in Heliopolis, on the night, etc. Horus repeateth the proclamation 4 times. All the adversaries fall and are overthrown and slaughtered. In repeateth the proclamation 4 times, and all his adversaries fall and are overthrown and slaughtered. Horus, son of Isis and son of Horus, repeateth an infinite number of festivals, and all his adversaries fall down, are overthrown and slaughtered. Their abode is transferred to the slaughtering block of the east. Their heads are cut away, their necks are crushed, their thighs are lopped off. They are given to the great annihilator who resideth in the valley, that they may not ever escape from under the custody of Seb. This chapter is said over a consecrated crown placed upon the face of the person. And thou shalt put incense upon the flame, for in the deceased, affecting his triumph over all his adversaries, whether dead or living, that he may become one of the followers of Osiris. And there shall be given to him drink and food in presence of this god. Thou shalt say it at dawn twice. A great protection is it, with undeviating regularity, for times infinite. The 19th chapter is a very recent recension of the 18th. The MSS containing it, as far as we know, are not older than the Greek period. It derives its origin from the practice of placing garlands or floral crowns upon mummies. The mummy of Ame-Zai, the first king of the 18th dynasty, when found portrait Oku, Maspero writes, Unguerland de Jolies fleurs roses de Delphinium oriental. Remains of such crowns are to be found in our museums. For farther details, I must refer to an excellent paper entitled La Couronne de la Justification by Dr. Plate of Leiden, in the second volume of the Transactions of the Oriental Congress held at Leiden in 1884, and see Plate 8. The 20th chapter is entitled Another Chapter, Crown of Triumph, but it is simply a tabulated form of chapter 18 with a rubric. Let the person say this chapter, and purify himself with water of natron. He will come forth by day after death, and take all forms according to his wish, and escape from the fire, with undeviating regularity, for times infinite. The earliest example of this tabulated form of the chapter is found on the Berlin sarcophagus of Menahotep. Hail to thee, Lord of Light, who art Prince of the house which is encircled by darkness and obscurity. I am come to thee glorified and purified. My hands are behind thee. Thy portion is that of those who have gone before thee. Give me my mouth that I may speak with it, and guide my heart at its hour of darkness and night. The oldest papyrus containing this chapter is that of Ani, and the translation is based upon it, but the text differs both from those written on the very ancient coffins of Heru and Set-Bastet, copied by M. Maspero, and from the later texts. The second paragraph seems to be spoken by the god, the first and third being from the deceased. On the coffins, the invocation is addressed not to Osiris, Lord of Light, or Radiant One, but to the one whose head is clothed with radiant white, of the house of darkness and obscurity. Instead of obscurity, the coffin has without a determinative, but shows what the word means. This ancient text continues, Come thou to me, glorified and purified. Let thy hands, here the text is obliterated. Shine thou with thine head. Give me my mouth that I may speak with it, and guide me on the glorious roads which are in heaven. I shine forth out of the egg which is in the unseen world. Let there be given my mouth that I may speak with it in presence of the great God, Lord of the Tuat. Let not my hand be repulsed by the divine circle of the great God. I am come to do the will of my heart, out of the tank of flame, which I extinguish when I come forth. This is one of the chapters of which the text certainly belongs to the earliest epic. It is one of those copied by Wilkinson from the coffin of Queen Menahotep. In the Papyrus of Ani, it is followed by chapter 21 as its conclusion, and both chapters are appended to chapter 1, before the rubric belonging to that chapter. The 17th chapter addresses Ra in thine egg, who risest up in thine orb, and shinest from thine horizon. The staircase of the great god at Abydos is frequently mentioned on the funeral stele. He saith, Let my mouth be opened by Ta, and let the muzzles which are upon my mouth be loosed by the god of my domain. Then let Thoth come, full and equipped with words of power, and let him loose the muzzles of Sutu which are upon my mouth, and let Tmul lend a hand to fling them at the assailants. Let my mouth be given to me. Let my mouth be opened by Ta, with that instrument of steel wherewith he openeth the mouths of the gods. I am Sekhet Yut, who sitteth on the right side of heaven. I am Sahit, encircled by the spirits of Heliopolis, and all the words of power, and all the accusations which are uttered against me. The gods stand firm against them, the cycles of the gods unitedly. A description of the ceremonies of the opening of the mouth, as performed at the tomb, will be found in the introduction to this translation. The speed of bloodhounds is given to those who are in heaven, and the mettle of hyenas to those who belong to the divine circle. Lo, I bring this my word of power, and I collect this word of power from every quarter in which it is, more persistently than hounds of chase, and more swiftly than the light. O thou who guidest the bark of Ra, sound is thy rigging and free from disaster as thou passest on to the tank of flame. Lo, I collect this my word of power from every quarter in which it is, in behalf of every person whom it concerneth, more persistently than hounds of chase, and more swiftly than light. The same who create the gods out of silence, or reduce them to inactivity. The same who impart warmth to the gods. Lo, I collect this my word of power from every quarter in which it is, in behalf of every person whom it concerneth, more persistently than hounds of chase, and more swiftly than the light. This is another of those chapters of which the antiquity is proved by the coffins of Horotep and Queen Mentuhotep. And even in the early times to which these coffins belong, it must have been extremely difficult to understand. In the translation here, given I have adhered as closely as possible to the oldest texts, but these, as the variants show, are not entirely trustworthy. The names of the second animal in the earlier texts, whether they stand for hyenas or for other animals of the chase, imply either speed or ferocity. And what must we understand under the latter term? We must look to the context. It is of a God speaking of himself and of his attributes. He is proud of them, and certainly does not wish them to be taken in a bad sense. Nor is it necessary that we should do so. We have only to remember what we learn at school. Cicero, Dicen, 10:33, contrasts the ferocitas juvenum, the high pluck of the young, with the infirmitas puerorum, and the gravitas and maturitas of later periods of life. What we have to understand of the Egyptian expression is mettlesome, of high, unbridled spirit. In the later text, the benya bird has been substituted for the beasts of the chase. The word is used as a name for the divine cynocephaly who appear at sunrise over the tank of flame. In addition to this interesting utterance of Egyptian theology, we have to note the idea of silence as the origin of the gods, or powers of nature. The notion was also current in the Greek world. Vera rovdevana, ikosidio, speaks of menikini partos visizii. It was from this source that the early Gnostic Valentinus borrowed this item of his system. St. Irenaeus, Hares 2:14, charges him with having taken it from the theogony of the comic poet Anaphanes. Let my name be given to me in the great house. Let me remember my name in the house of flame on the night, wherein the years are counted and the months are reckoned, one by one. I am he who dwelleth in heaven, and who sitteth on the eastern side of heaven. And if there be any God who cometh not in my train, I utter his name at once. He saith, Heart mine to me, in the place of hearts. Whole heart mine to me, in the place of whole hearts. Let me have my heart that it may rest within me. But I shall feed upon the food of Osiris, on the eastern side of the mead of amaranthine flowers. Be there given to me my mouth wherewith to speak, and my feet for walking. And let me have my arms wherewith to overthrow my adversaries. The soul moves on, slowly, and we come now to the weighing of the heart. Let two hands from the earth open my mouth. Let Seb, the Urpa of the gods, part my two jaws. Let him open my two eyes which are closed, and give motion to my two hands which are powerless. And let Anubis give vigor to my legs, that I may raise myself up upon them. And may Sekhet the divine one lift me up, so that I may arise in heaven and issue my behest in Memphis. I am in possession of my heart. I am possession of my whole heart. I am possession of my arms, and I have possession of my legs. I do whatsoever my genius willeth, and my soul is not bound to my body at the gates of Amenta. From the orthography of it seems to have been connected in popular opinion with its position in the anterior part of the body. And from various uses of the word it appears to denote not merely the heart, but the heart with all that is attached to it, especially the lungs which embrace it. It is, for instance, to that air is conducted according to the medical papyri, and it is not improbable that and organs of respiration are closely connected words. But perhaps the best argument may be found in the vignettes of chapter 28, where the two lungs are actually drawn, as in the Hieratic Papyrus, PL 2, published by Sir Charles Nicholson. In others, as Leiden 16, even the larynx is visible. See Plate X. The Italian word carota is immortalized through its occurrence in a memorable passage in Dante, ANF 18EI. But for want of a better English term than the butcher's technical word pluck, I use the expression whole heart. O ye gods who seize upon hearts, and who pluck out the whole heart, and whose hands fashion anew the heart of a person according to what he hath done, lo now, let that be forgiven to him by you. Let not my heart be fashioned anew according to all the evil things said against me. For this heart of mine is the heart of the God of mighty names, of the great God whose words are in his members, and who giveth free course to his heart which is within him. And most keen of insight is his heart among the gods. Ho to me, heart of mine, I am in possession of thee. I am thy master, and thou art by me. Fall not away from me. I am the dictator to whom thou shalt obey in the netherworld. Let not this whole heart of mine be torn from me by the divine champions in Heliopolis. O thou who turnest back after having smitten him, and hast accomplished the overthrow. I have had granted to it, and awarded to it the glow of heart at the hour of the God of the broad face, and have offered the sacrificial cakes in Hermopolis.